it's now the incumbent on UK politicians and the UK government to respect that decision of the American people and work with President Trump.
Government statement is self-evident nonsense. I mean, Trump has a special relationship, not with us, with Vladimir Putin.
Yes, he says, if Trump comes to the UK, I will be out protesting on the streets. He is a racist, KKK and Nazi sympathiser. So he doesn't need to apologise.
But President Trump...
I think he should apologise.
David Lammy should absolutely not apologise because what he said is actually true.
Right, well...
For those of you who don't know, George Monbiot likes to catastrophise. He said climate change would end us, but apparently Trump is now the #1 threat to British national security. Conveniently, he wants us to rejoin the European Union for our own national security. His diatribe here is extreme by any standards. He sounds like a complete lunatic, in all honesty. Nigel Farage pointed out the importance of working closely with President Trump. Luckily, there was people there to call out his deranged doom-mongering, including Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Fred Flitz, who put the British mainstream media in their place yesterday.
Liberal British elite are out to get Trump. They're not interested in objective journalism. That's why the British people were so surprised at this outcome. They've seen these lies on your channel, on BBC, in The Economist. So, I mean, I don't even know what the point is talking with you. You're so incredibly biased.
Mr. Monbiot talks like Trump is the new Hitler, like all these lefties do. But as you'll hear, they are the ones cheering on the never-ending war in Ukraine. People are dying in their hundreds of thousands. Mr. Fritz said there needs to be a solution to end the conflict. That seems awfully reasonable to me. From what I've heard, Trump is sounding like the one who wants to end the bloodshed. George Monbiot replies to that with, it's down to the Ukrainian people to decide if they want to continue fighting or not. Then it kindly gets pointed out to him that it is our taxpayers' money that is funding them. That, along with the fact we have taken in well over 100,000 Ukrainian refugees, means we are entitled to an opinion on this. The more he talks, the more extreme Monbiot becomes, suggesting Trump couldn't even find the UK on a map, and the only special relationship Trump will have is with Vladimir Putin. He defends the British Foreign Secretary's disgusting comments, calling Trump a Nazi and KKK sympathiser. Mr. Flitz suggests he needs to apologise to Mr. Trump. At one point, he's trying to interject on some of the nonsense he can hear, and he's on mute. Watching this, even I'm honestly surprised by how extreme this lefty meltdown has been. I've never seen anything like it. Take a watch.
George?
Well, it's always the same story. Yes, there's going to be this special relationship. No, sorry. If there's any special relationship, it's with Trump and Putin.
OK, well, talking of the relationship, let us just have a look at this comment from 2017 by the now Foreign Secretary David Lammy. Yes, he says, if Trump comes to the UK, I will be out protesting on the streets. He is a racist, KKK and Nazi sympathiser. Fred, is this going to jeopardise the relationship?
Well, David Lammy went out of his way to meet with Trump advisors over the summer, and I understand he met with Senator Vance. I think that's promising. I will say that I declined to meet with Lammy because of those comments myself, but I'm willing to give Lammy a second chance, and I think President Trump will too.
So he doesn't need to apologise?
But President Trump...
I think he should apologise.
And David Lammy should absolutely not apologise because what he said is actually true.
Right, well, there's clearly
If it was true, why would he appoint a vice president who's married to an Asian woman?
A vice president who himself has called Trump America's Hitler.
And Vance was useful.
He's clearly racist. He is clearly a sympathiser with far-right and fascist movements. That is true. It's demonstrable fact.
Right.
I guess when people talk about Trump being a racist and all these other things, I'll note that this was a really comprehensive and decisive election where he significantly increased his support from African Americans and from women, and it's just an unfair thing to say
that doesn't stop him from being a racist.
Doesn't have support from a very broad coalition in our country.
Both things can be true?
Both things can be true.
George?
Well, it's true. I mean, he's made plenty of racist comments, plenty of really outrageous, obnoxious comments. Sure, people voted for him, but that doesn't stop Trump from being a racist.
Rachel?
The American people have spoken. He's been democratically and legitimately elected. It's now the incumbent on UK politicians and the UK government to respect that decision of the American people and work with President Trump in our national interest, but and also the interests of global security, which is in a very volatile and precarious situation right now. That's why I'm emphatic that the world is a safer place now that we have Donald Trump in the White House.
George?
Well, you're all being very polite, but Braverman's statement is self-evident nonsense. I mean, Trump has a special relationship, not with us, with Vladimir Putin, and he's made it pretty clear that he's likely to cut off support to Ukraine and allow Putin to complete his invasion, in which case we're all less safe. When Trump was president before, he repeatedly threatened to use nuclear weapons. How does any of this make us safer? And to me, Braverman is one of those fake patriots who always say, yeah, I love my country, but the moment some foreign demagogue arises, they prostrate themselves in the dust. They are always the first to sell us down the river. They're always the first to stand up and say what a wonderful country this is, and then we're going to appease the people who threaten this country. I think those of us who truly love this country should say it how it is. Donald Trump is a massive threat to us.
David, George's version, Donald Trump a massive threat, or is the world a safer place, as Suella Braverman says?
That is not untypical George catastrophism. What was the Trump campaign slogan? It was peace through strength. I mean, in terms of deaths, he is likely to bring the Ukraine-Russia war to an end.
It's a pleasure to be here. I think there's a lot of confusion over President Trump's approach to the war in Ukraine. And I might add, I'm not speaking for him because he speaks for himself. But Trump is determined to end the war because he thinks this has become an endless war of attrition. This doesn't mean giving in to Putin or appeasing Putin. It's recognizing the situation on the ground. And Trump has said he'd like to have a peace agreement that's fair to both sides. And in my opinion, I would urge him to take this approach. There's no strategy right now by Europe or by the United States. We have a position to arm Ukraine for as long as it takes because we hate Putin, because he's been demonized as being a war criminal, likening him to Hamas, which is what Joe Biden did. This is frankly virtue signaling. There's no strategy here. Basically, it seems that Western leaders are prepared to fight the Ukrainian war for their principles to the last Ukrainian soldier. Ukraine's running out of soldiers. So I think the best way to end the war is to have a leader determined to do so. Trump is determined to end it. He said this to both sides, and I think that effort's going to start now. The current way that this conflict is developing into a war of attrition that is killing off a whole generation of young Ukrainian men, that's immoral, and that has to change.
And it's a bit like saying, right, France has invaded the UK. France can have Kent and Sussex, and then we'll just call that quits, shall we? I mean, this is an imperial invasion. It's a war of aggression against a sovereign nation. And what I'm hearing here are the voices of appeasement.
Fred, would you like to respond to that? George has called, he says he's hearing the voices of appeasement.
In 2022, I think there was a good prospect of pushing most Russian troops out if Ukraine got the weapons it had requested. But the West didn't give those weapons to Ukraine. And I understand that it certainly is an outcome that nobody's happy about, that Russia may not be giving back the territory it has seized immediately. But I don't see a way to get Russia out of Ukraine. If the guest who just said that has a solution, I'd like to hear it. I have a solution on how we can get Russian troops out of Ukraine. We can send in NATO troops. The U.S. doesn't want to do that. The U.K. doesn't want to do that. So unless we're going to do that, because Russia is so well dug in Ukraine, another approach has to be found. And there's growing support on the right and left in the United States to find another approach, that this long-term policy of arming Ukraine for as long as it takes is not working, is immoral, and we have to find another way.
There is one group of people who should decide what happens in Ukraine, and that's the Ukrainians.
But that's true,
Rachel.
George. But on the other hand, it is also British taxpayers who are also spending money to defend Ukrainians and also welcoming and to defend ourselves and also welcoming Ukrainians in.
George, briefly, can I just ask you, I mean, is this the time, discussion about NATO, is this the time?
And we can't rely on Trump anymore. I think, we do need stronger ties within Europe. I would love to see the UK rejoining the single market, rejoining the customs union, in order to strengthen those ties.
The Reform leader, Nigel Farage.
I come back to the point of trade. This matters because I think where the Prime Minister will find himself is stuck between Brussels, with whom he wants a closer relationship, and America, with whom not having a big tariff regime is vital to our economy. So it's going to be make your mind up time for the British Prime Minister. Do we go into direct negotiations with America as soon as the Trade Secretary is appointed, or do we stick to the Brussels line?
Here we are discussing the classic British delusion, we really count in America, and what Donald Trump is, he's got to decide whether he's siding with the UK or not. He probably couldn't even place us on a map. He couldn't give a damn about the UK.
His mother is Scottish.
Yeah,
I mean...
he's not interested. Donald Trump is interested in Donald Trump. He does not have preferences. He has interests. The US has always had interests. The UK has always had interests. But we have this myth of the special relationship, and we really count in the minds of American presidents. Sorry, we don't.
Fred, is the special relationship a myth?
Well, look, I flew to Scotland with the president on Air Force One, so I think he knows where the UK is. and I do believe that the president there's a special place in his heart for the United Kingdom. And I think we're going to see that in this. And even though there's a Labour government, I think there's going to be a wonderful relationship. I think your prime minister did the right thing in meeting with Mr. Trump before the election. And I think they're going to hit it off well. And there's going to be a closer relationship, I think, between the US and the UK than there will be with a number of European nations because of trade and because of this problem with NATO spending.
OK, well, Fred...
We hear them every 4 years.
George?
Well, it's always the same story. Yes, there's going to be this special relationship. No, sorry. If there's any special relationship, it's with Trump and Putin.